Have you ever seen a neighborhood security guard try to arrest someone for working out in their own yard? I have, and it quickly escalated. My wife and I just wanted a peaceful life in a nice neighborhood, but the HOA had other plans. The president acted like she was running the Pentagon, and her security team was ready to call in backup over a jump squat. What began with a warning notice turned into a full-blown showdown right on our front lawn. And let's just say, Ellie's plan didn't go the way she expected. It all started on what should have been the happiest day in months. I was standing at Denver International Airport holding a sign that said, "Welcome home, hero." Even though Emma had specifically asked me not to make a big deal, 6 months apart is a long time, especially when your wife is somewhere in the Pacific doing training so classified, she couldn't even tell me which ocean she was in most days. When she finally walked through those doors in her dress blues, I barely recognized her. She looked like someone who had been trained to break enemies and bake pies, and was trying to remember which one to do first. We drove home to Sunset Hills in comfortable silence, her hand in mine, both of us just thankful to be together again. She kept glancing out the window at the suburban neighborhoods we passed, probably wondering how she was supposed to transition from defending democracy to arguing about lawn height regulations. All she wanted was peace, not a parade, not prying eyes. I squeezed her hand and promised her that normal was exactly what she'd get, because I was the kind of optimistic fool who believed suburbia was a peaceful place where reasonable people mind their own business. Sunset Hills was the picture-perfect, planned community where every house looked magazine-ready, lawns greener than golf courses, streets cleaner than most people's kitchens. The HOA fees were steep enough to finance a small war, but I figured it was worth it for the peace and amenities. Emma loved the idea of having a pool and gym right in the neighborhood, especially after months of working out in spaces smaller than most people's closets. What I didn't realize was that living in an HOA community meant living under constant scrutiny from people who'd turned neighborhood watch into a contact sport. Emma fell into a routine with military precision, up at 5:30 every morning for her workout in our backyard. Since she wasn't officially registered with the HOA yet, I'd watch her through the kitchen window as I made coffee. She moved like a professional athlete preparing for the Olympics of personal destruction. What I didn't know was that someone else was watching her too, taking notes like she was conducting surveillance on a foreign operative instead of doing morning calisthenics. From the second-floor window across the street, Ellie Whitford was documenting Emma's every move with Cold War spy dedication. She had been keeping a detailed log since day one. 6:02 a.m. Subject performing suspicious physical training. 6:35 a.m. Subject running perimeter of property. Ellie had been the self-appointed empress of Sunset Hills for 3 years, manipulating her way into the HOA presidency. She was the kind of woman who saw strength in other women as a personal threat, especially when that strength came in the form of someone who looked like they could snap her in half without spilling their morning coffee. The first sign of trouble came on Emma's third morning home. She found a piece of paper clamped under our front door knocker. It was an official-looking notice on Sunset Hills HOA letterhead that read, "Warning, unregistered resident detected on property. Contact HOA office immediately or face consequences." Emma brought it inside with the kind of expression most people reserve for finding a snake in their mailbox. "What kind of consequences?" she asked, and I could see her mind shifting into tactical assessment mode. I laughed it off like the naive fool I was, figuring it was just standard bureaucratic nonsense. "Probably a strongly worded letter," I told her. "We get you registered this weekend." But Emma wasn't laughing. She kept staring at the notice like it was a ransom demand. "Logan," she said quietly, "someone's been watching me closely enough to document specific activities. This isn't random paperwork. This is targeted surveillance." That's when I realized we weren't dealing with simple administrative oversight. We were dealing with someone who had made my wife a target before she'd even unpacked her suitcases. And somewhere behind a lace curtain across the street, someone had already written her first complaint. The next morning, Emma was watering her small herb garden when Ellie Whitford made her grand entrance, like the queen of suburbia inspecting her domain. I was working from home when I heard voices outside, and something in the tone made me move to the window faster than a cat hearing a can opener. There was a woman on our property with a clipboard, clutched like body armor, wearing an official HOA badge pinned to her blazer with Medal of Honor pride. She was maybe 5 feet 7 inches, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that could freeze water at 20 paces. Emma was holding our garden hose, looking like she'd been interrupted by someone claiming to be the suburban welcoming committee. "You don't appear in our logs," Ellie said, tapping her clipboard like it had arrest powers. Emma set down the hose with careful precision. That should have been Ellie's first warning. "Then maybe your logs are outdated, like your blazer," Emma replied with a tone so calm it was practically medicinal. Ellie made a theatrical show of consulting her clipboard, flipping through pages like she was reviewing classified documents instead of neighborhood gossip. "The mailbox only shows Logan Pierce. Are you perhaps a guest who's overstayed your welcome?" The question was designed to be insulting, and I watched Emma's jaw tighten like she was biting back words that would have made a drill sergeant blush. Emma's response was so measured it made Ellie take a step back. But this was only the beginning. Amateur dramatics look even more ridiculous when you're being confronted on your own property by a stranger. "If you need information about our household," Emma said, "I suggest you speak with my husband. I'm not required to justify my presence on my own property to someone I've never met." Ellie's face turned red, as though she'd been slapped. She clearly expected Emma to start apologizing and scrambling to prove herself, but instead, she was dismissed by someone who radiated unshakable confidence. "I'm Ellie Whitford, president of the Sunset Hills Homeowners Association, and I have every right to investigate unauthorized residents," Ellie snapped, her voice climbing into high-pitched territory. Emma smiled, but it was about as friendly as a shark's grin. "Then investigate away, but do it from your own property," she replied, picking up the garden hose and effectively ending the conversation. I thought that would be the end of Ellie's power trip, but I was wrong. That afternoon, while Emma was inside taking a shower, our garbage bin had been turned into modern art in our driveway. Trash was scattered everywhere, like confetti at the world's worst party. Stuck to the side was a note on HOA letterhead: "Improper waste sorting detected. Sunset Hills residents are expected to follow community guidelines. We've been more careful about trash sorting than a lab handling hazardous materials." This wasn't about garbage guidelines. This was psychological warfare, written in passive-aggressive suburban language. I was picking up scattered papers when Emma came outside, her expression shifting from confusion to calculation in seconds. She took one look at the mess and immediately started scanning surrounding houses like she was looking for sniper positions. "Classic intimidation tactics," she said quietly, helping me clean up. "Make the target feel constantly watched and judged. Create a sense of inevitable failure." A curtain twitched across the street, followed by the click of a camera. "Sunset Hills surveillance, 700 hours, she muttered under her breath. I asked if we should call the HOA office to complain, but Emma shook her head. That's exactly what she wants. She wants us to react emotionally, to look like unstable new residents who can't handle suburban criticism. We're going to document this and wait for her next move." I was impressed by her tactical thinking, but worried about what that next move might look like. Emma put her hand on my shoulder with that reassuring smile that had gotten me through her entire deployment. "Don't worry, Logan. I've dealt with actual enemies who wanted to kill me. I think I can handle one suburban dictator with delusions of grandeur. Let me escalate this to our security officer," Ellie had warned earlier. We laughed. We shouldn't have. The next morning brought our introduction to Brad Wilson, Ellie's personal enforcer, who made mall security guards look like Navy SEALs. He appeared at our front door wearing what looked like a discount costume shop security uniform, complete with a badge probably bought from the same place kids get sheriff stars. He was maybe 45, overweight in a way that suggested a serious relationship with donuts, sporting a mustache that screamed, "I peaked in high school." When Emma answered the door in her workout clothes, clearly not expecting visitors who looked like they'd escaped from community theater, Brad puffed up like a rooster trying to impress a hawk. "I'm Brad Wilson, security officer for Sunset Hills HOA, and I need you to come with me right now for questioning." Emma looked him up and down with the kind of expression most people reserve for finding something unpleasant stuck to their shoe, probably cataloging 17 different ways she could end his security career without breaking a sweat. The next morning started like any other, with Emma lacing up her running shoes at exactly 5:45 a.m., while I stumbled around trying to remember how coffee makers work. I was just starting to feel human when I heard shouting outside. The kind that makes your blood run cold because you know someone's about to do something spectacularly stupid. I dropped my coffee mug and ran to the front window. What I saw made my heart stop. There was Brad Wilson standing in our quiet suburban street, pointing something at my wife. In his shaky hands was something black and blocky. Fake or not, it made your gut clench. Emma stood frozen about 20 feet away, her hands slightly raised, her face displaying the kind of calm that should have terrified Brad more than any shouting would have. "Stop right there. Hands where I can see them," Brad shouted, his voice cracking with adrenaline and fake authority. The device in his hands was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane, making everything infinitely more dangerous. Emma's response was so quiet I almost couldn't hear it, but her words carried cold authority that comes from real training. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" she asked, her voice steady as bedrock. I could see her evaluating the situation with military precision, probably calculating distances and ways she could disarm him without getting a scuff on her running shoes. But she didn't move. She stood like a statue, letting this pathetic wannabe think he had control when they both knew he was about as threatening as an angry chihuahua. Brad was sweating despite the cool morning air, clearly in over his head, but too committed to back down. "You're under citizen's arrest for trespassing and suspicious behavior. Ellie Whitford reported you as a potential threat, and I'm authorized to detain you until proper authorities arrive." Emma tilted her head slightly, assessing not just the immediate threat, but the entire tactical situation. "What training do you have, Brad, other than you two law and cosplay?" Each question was delivered calmly, but I could hear the underlying message. You have no idea who you're dealing with, and you're making a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your life. That's when I realized I needed to get out there before this turned into a tragedy starring the world's most incompetent security guard. I burst through the front door and ran toward them, trying to position myself where I could help Emma if things went sideways. "What the hell is going on here?" I shouted, hoping to break Brad's focus. Brad swung the device toward me for a split second before swinging it back to Emma. In that moment, I saw my wife's muscles tense like a coiled spring. She could have ended this faster than most people tie their shoes. But she chose restraint, probably to avoid creating a crime scene in our front yard. "Your wife is a security threat," Brad explained, his voice getting higher and more panicked. "She refuses to provide identification. She's been conducting suspicious training, and she matches the profile of someone dangerous to our community." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but the device in his hands kept the humor locked away. Just as I was about to try talking Brad down, I heard high heels clicking on the pavement. Ellie Whitford appeared around the corner, moving fast but trying to look casual, as if she just happened to be taking a morning stroll instead of orchestrating a confrontation. The timing was Swiss watch perfect. "Oh my, I just stepped out for air," she said, putting on an Oscar-worthy performance of shocked concern. Such unfortunate timing, or perfect, depending on how you look at it. But I could see the satisfaction in her eyes, the barely contained glee of someone whose plan was working perfectly. Emma saw it too, and for the first time since this circus started, I saw a flash of real anger across her face. Not fear, not confusion, but cold fury. "Mrs. Whitford," Emma said, her voice carrying a tone I'd never heard before. "How convenient that you happened to arrive just as your security officer was pointing a device at an unarmed woman on her own property." Ellie's face flushed, but she maintained her performance. I heard shouting and came to help. "Brad is just doing his job, ensuring our community stays safe." Emma nodded slowly, filing away every word for future reference. "Your community safety protocol involves threatening residents before attempting verification or communication." Instead of trying to de-escalate like a reasonable person, Ellie decided to double down on stupid. She walked over to Brad's patrol car, grabbed what looked like a bullhorn, and prepared to broadcast her delusions to the entire neighborhood. "Attention, Sunset Hills residents. We have successfully contained a potential security threat. Thanks to our security team, our community remains safe." I watched Emma's face as those words hit her, and I saw something shift in her expression that made me glad I was on her side. That morning, the HOA drew first blood,